We are live right now, so, yeah, we're on. I told him we were ready, so, and then we proceeded to have this discussion, so. Everybody welcome. We are gonna begin the Planning and Zoning Commission interviews. And we were just having a brief discussion about whether or not to ask the applicants to wait outside or if they can all just wait right in here. And so I think we're okay to let them all just stay in here and watch the interviews. Our first guest this evening has done this before, so we figure he'll show everyone how to do it. Kim Roney is on her way, so she'll be joining us as we enter in through this process. So we're gonna do 10-minute interviews with each of the planning and zoning applicants. We have 4 folks that are here today. There are 5 applicants that the council's considering that we whittled it down to at our last meeting. We had a lot of people apply for P&Z this time, so that was really good to see so much interest in being on our Planning and Zoning Commission. So the first person we're going to interview is Andrew Fletcher. And Mr. Fletcher, if you would step up. Maggie's gonna keep the time at 10 minutes. Are you gonna do the lights and stuff? She's gonna buzz you at the end of it, or buzz us, really. So if we could just, we'll each have opportunities to ask you questions, but I'll just kick it off by asking you to introduce yourself to us and let us know about why you're interested in serving on planning and zoning.
Sure. My name is Andrew Fletcher, and I'm here to interview for the planning and zoning. It's my second time in the interview process, but I'm a long time. I have 6 years on the Downtown Commission, 7 years on the Public Art and Cultural Commission before this. So I'm very familiar with these boards and processes, and I know the work of planning and zoning is highly interesting to me because it really helps sculpt the land use of the future, and we really need to bring our zoning code and our land use codes into the 21st century. And so I have to make a verbal update right now to my resume because when I filed my resume, I had not yet been accepted for a job, but I'm now an employee of Urban 3. And so in my professional life, I'm also dealing, this is just my second week, so I don't want to overstate my experience here, but I'm very pleased to be there because it aligns with my interests and my passions, and that's what brings me here as well. So I would be happy and privileged to help lead the Planning and Zoning Commission and our city into the 21st century as far as zoning codes go, because we see that a lot of the problems in our city are these legacy rules on what we can do with our land and where, and much of that heat turns into, goes into the political realm when people are frustrated about how we're not growing in a way that seems to be bringing everyone along, and these questions come before you at this dais, and often in highly heated and political ways. And if we had better expectations for our residents and the developers in our community, I believe that we could do a much better job of satisfying all those concerns and taking some of the work off of council.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm gonna just kick it around. We don't have to go in any particular order, but if you wanna ask some questions, or if anybody wants to jump in.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Go, please.
No, you
Yep.
got it. Hello, Andrew.
Hello.
Tell me how you would balance the needs, requests, and desires of legacy neighborhoods in particular, as far as anti-displacement strategies go, with the need to increase housing supply. Which would you prioritize and why?
That's a very good question. It affects a lot of neighborhoods. The legacy neighborhoods are more concentrated with these issues, and so they're a great place to start. There is an existing program right now that I believe could be expanded, and I think this would benefit legacy communities, legacy neighborhoods a lot. As far as homeowners often have a great advantage in these communities, but they're also, and you have a program that benefits them right now, which is the tax rebate program. I suspect that we're going to have a lot more people applying for this right now because of the tax increases and the revaluation in 2025. There is an addition to this program, which I've been suggesting to a couple of you already, and that is that the naturally occurring affordable housing that we have in our community is often provided by small landlords, and they're going to pass on these tax increases to their tenants. And I think we can mitigate that. And by expanding the rebate program that is administered by the county, where $500 can be returned to to a homeowner, what we're missing out on, and this is something that I first picked up on as a renter, because I live in naturally occurring affordable housing as a renter, and this program could be expanded so that landlords who are out there helping to solve our housing issues can apply for this same rebate to try to mitigate these tax increases that this body has felt needful to pay for the needs of our city. But to mitigate these issues, we have to start considering not just, we have to try to get these benefits to tenants as well as homeowners so that we can keep people in their homes. And this would also function as a disincentivization for landlords to kick out long-term tenants and replace them with short-term rentals and tourists. So this is the type of example that, and the type of thinking that I'd be bringing to planning and zoning.
Did you have one? Go ahead. Andrew, I've worked with you on, I guess, the Downtown Commission
Yes.
primarily, and one of the reasons I put you forth for interview was because I've seen you flush out conversations and hear both sides of an issue and put forth thoughtful kind of conclusions, and I appreciate that when it comes to these kind of more serious items that come to P&Z. So my question is, we often have to make decisions and prioritize decisions. So if you were reviewing a project, in what order would you weigh these three things? Design, affordable programming, and new housing inventory?
It's a good question. I will tell you something similar that I reviewed at Downtown Commission. I think you did too. And the question was about tree canopy or affordable housing. And it was a zero-sum conversation, pretty much. We can only do either. We have existing tree canopy, and it was the affordable housing component that was connected to the large project that resulted in the parking deck in between Cox and Ashland. And they wanted to satisfy the affordable housing requirements by using an adjacent piece of land and losing the tree canopy. I have to say this is a decision that kept me up at night. And so, well, those three things, it would be difficult to weigh them without a project in front of me. I would probably, these are all important things, and I would weigh them probably differently for each project, depending on their location, depending on the needs of that neighborhood. But an example of my decision-making, I think, is what you're really asking for. And that is that I ended up choosing affordable housing because we have to build affordable housing and we can plant trees. And that was a very difficult decision, but that, and especially affordable housing, I might have not thought of it that way if I was reviewing a project toward the outskirts of the city. But because it was in our downtown core, and I know that the positive environmental effects of having our workers live very close to their work and how that relieves our infrastructure and transportation needs, I found that to be the more important issue. And so that's an example of how I looked at that decision. And a lot of the decisions at Downtown Commission at that time were before the Design Review Committee was brought in. We had to look at things like this very holistically, including design and that. I will say that I would weigh affordable housing in adjacent to work areas very strongly. It would be, I think it would be hard for other concerns to override that, but they certainly could depending on the project.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I have
But
a
you still-
question.
Wait, Sandra was, I'm sorry, in terms of order, they were kind of jockeying over here.
Okay. Thank you, Andrew, for being here today. And just want to ask you, do you have any ideas how you would deal with people in the community or the NIMBYs, as far as zoning? Have you thought about the best way to deal with those communities so we can actually sort of share the responsibilities for affordable housing throughout the community?
Well, I think you captured the idea right there with sharing the responsibility. I think if we only ask some neighborhoods to deal with growth, then, and I think what's going to happen is that they're going to have a backlash. And we've seen this in a lot of cases. Legacy neighborhoods, very wealthy neighborhoods, every neighborhood seems to have this feature to it. Now, I have also championed more notifications for zoning decisions, because we want, I think, people to be involved in the decisions that affect their neighborhood. But I think the problem is that our zoning has led to a lot of explosive, exponential growth in places that alienated people. And I think what we need to do, and what is the recommendations of organizations like Strongtown, and also in the Missing Middle study, is that we need to ask for incremental growth more evenly distributed throughout our city. And the very high growth should be concentrated in our downtown center. And so that is, I think the strategy is that when you go from a 1-story, 2-story neighborhood, and all of a sudden a 6-story building comes in, that's exponential growth, and you'll see people even outside that neighborhood that will rally to the cause to fight that project because it's so alienating. If we have incremental growth where we're going from 1-story, 2-story, we're adding duplexes and quadruplexes and things like that, that is a much gentler form of growth, and if we spread that equally throughout the city, we can actually see a lot of growth rather than just concentrating it in 1 or 2 places.
Okay, so you don't really, so when you talked about doing that, you still are not sort of addressing the question I wanted to sort of get at, is would you approach those communities? I mean, I can understand what you're saying about the growth, but have you thought about it? I mean, because it's to me, it's a very sensitive and difficult situation. I was just wondering, had you thought about how we can actually approach them?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I can't promise you that I can single-handedly handle the NIMBYs. We all need to pitch in together and communicate a vision to these neighborhoods that they can be part of the future and that it's not going to change so quickly. But all neighborhoods change before someone moves in and after someone moves into a neighborhood. What we can't do is promise people that we're going to flash freeze their neighborhood just as it is right now, because that's not realistic. That's not how we built this city. It's not how we're going to build this city in the future. That is a big challenge. It's a challenge that far supersedes the Planning and Zoning Commission and Asheville City Council, and in fact is in every community in this entire country, so I'm not going to promise to solve that. But I do promise to take it seriously and try to, I think in my past work, I've always tried to bring the community in on decisions rather than thinking that I have all the answers myself.
Thank you. Okay, we have reached time. And sorry, we didn't make it all the way around. So thank you very much. We will be voting on this tonight. I think you know that. But,
Cool. I will probably be at the debate.
And Maggie thinks we won't get to it till 8:33, but hopefully it won't quite be that late. Okay, the next person we're interviewing is Anna Zuvskaya. You'll help me say your last name correctly, I hope, Anna. And please step forward. If you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're interested in serving on the Planning and Zoning Commission for the City of Asheville.
Sure, I'm Anna Zievska, you got it right on. I am the Executive Director of the Asheville-Buncombe Community Land Trust, have been in that position for about 5 years, and am excited to be a part of planning and zoning because it's such a great opportunity to shape the future of Asheville. And in my short 5 years in Asheville, I've seen how much change has happened and how home prices have doubled, and how difficult it has gotten for the community land trust to create properties and working with individuals. So I want to be a part of the solution to shape the future and make sure that the future is affordable to people who have been in Asheville for the long term.
Great. Okay, all right, I'm gonna go over here first. Okay.
I'll jump
If
in.
either of you have a.
Talk to me about what you think a few of the primary drivers are of the housing crisis in Asheville.
Where do I start? We are a great destination for people who are coming for retirement or a climate haven or even lower housing prices than other places. So we've seen this influx of people moving to the area. And whereas to somebody who's coming from New York and has sold their house there and has $500,000 in cash, they can afford to buy here and it's no problem. To somebody that lives here and has lived here, a property tax increase of $1,000 a month or a year can be devastating. So that's, of course, part of the reasons why prices have gone up. We've seen the market has affected what's happening. So we've seen an increase in interest rates that has taken a huge hit on really everybody at every level of income, but especially our lowest income residents. And so people are not only priced out, but people are also getting pushed out. So there's pressures within, there's pressures, external pressures, internal pressures. Those are just a couple of answers, but there are many more as well. So prices have gone up, interest rates have gone up. In our perspective, and I see this with a lot of affordable housing projects, funding has gone down, so that has made it more difficult to create that supply and make sure that the supply is also affordable at the same time.
Thanks.
I have a question prepared for everyone, and it is, here in Asheville, we dwell on this ancestral land of the Cherokee and acknowledge the harms of Asheville's legacy of urban renewal, especially the impacts on Black businesses, homeowners, faith communities, health institutions, and schools. What are some of the opportunities you imagine our planning and zoning might have to engage and inform individuals, neighborhoods, organizations impacted by historic and current zoning policies and land use as we work towards healing, repair, and a hopeful future for our city?
Yeah, well, I am glad that the city has commissioned a study, and there are a lot of anti-displacement strategies in that study. There are some that we can't necessarily enact in North Carolina, so I'm curious how that process unfolds to see what we can and can't do. But the first thing that pops up in my mind is community benefits agreements. Again, we'll have to see how that tool may or may not play out here. But I think as development happens, there is a lot of opportunity to create community benefits agreements and to ensure that those benefits are reaching the very people that have been displaced through any of the things that you named, and to make sure that the profits and the benefits are staying within the community to make sure that the people who are most impacted are not, again, pushed out of the community.
Yes, I heard you mention the land trust, and land trust is a very, it's a very good feature that actually could help. But could you maybe elaborate on how come land trusts are so challenging to actually get them implemented?
Yeah, so I always say that it really depends on the amount of funding that the organization gets. So maybe this isn't comparing apples to apples, but I talk about Houston's Community Land Trust quite a bit, and they had a historic $50 million investment up front in their organization that has made a huge difference. So kind of compared to where we are and where they are right now, along the same timelines, they have a lot more homes in inventory, and it's that funding that's opened up. We've had to, while we've had successes and have had funding, like compared to cities that haven't given any kind of funding, you know, we've been fortunate to have the funding. We've also had to play catch up. We received funding 5 years ago, and like I said, in those 5 years, home prices have doubled, and so we have had to kind of get creative and tweak our numbers and find additional funding to make sure that we can still create the same number of units that was promised in the agreement. So, you know, it's a new organization. Anytime there's a new organization, it takes time. It takes energy to build capacity, but I really think it all comes down to funding. So with more funding, we'll be able to hire more staff, purchase more properties, provide deeper subsidies in those properties, and move more quickly to get units online.
3 words, put them in order, and how you'd prioritize them. I guess it's more than 3 words. Design, affordable programming, and new housing inventory.
Sure. So I have to say affordable housing, number one, that's to me a no-brainer. And I think every project has to have that component. We're bringing so many units online, and sometimes so few of them are affordable. So I think we have to prioritize that. We have to have that as part of every project that we see. And then design and inventory is hard. So I am big on design, and I want to also make sure that Asheville looks like Asheville in the future. And so I favor kind of putting design next, and I also know that inventory is really important. So I think I'm a little bit torn on those two. But we have to consider all of them, and I think affordable housing would definitely be number one for me. Thank you.
Do we still have time?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Okay. So I want to ask the question I asked before, and just so you know, I'm really asking which would you prioritize? Do you, and I guess it's a philosophical question. How do you prioritize the needs of legacy neighborhoods if there are times when there's a battle with increasing supply of housing in and around those neighborhoods? Which voices would you prioritize?
Yeah, so I think we always have to prioritize the community voice. I think that sometimes that's missing. Sometimes the community is completely left out. Sometimes the community is invited late to the table. Sometimes they're invited and heard, but then their opinion is disregarded. So I think, again, just like affordable housing, we have to prioritize the community every time. We have to make difficult decisions on whether we can 100% give the community everything that they need or not. But regardless, I think that no matter what the project is, no matter what the situation is, the community needs to be heard, and their feedback needs to be incorporated one way or another.
Any other questions by anyone on council? We don't necessarily have to use all 10 minutes, so. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next interviewee is Jamika Shante Johnson. Give you a second to get up here. Thank you. Hi. Welcome, and if you could just begin by telling us a little bit about yourself and why you're interested in serving on the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Yeah. Thank you for having me today, everyone. My name is Jamika Johnson. I'm a realtor in the area, so it's a little bit about me, where I approached this this board of really want to be on here to expand upon that knowledge and also expand upon my in-depth with the community of being very involved with the local real estate board, committees of affordable housing and the community relations, and rebranding of that with DEI as well for all inclusivity. And also being a board president for WNC Realtors, a part of NARAB that's been around for a number of years, that just model to promote democracy in housing. So I definitely have focused a lot on that in my career, and that is the approach I want to bring to this.
Thank you. Okay, who wants to go this time?
Go ahead. I'm going to ask the same question each time, so go
I
ahead.
think I'll go. Talk to me about what you see as the primary drivers of Asheville's housing crisis.
Always with that, we are such a town or city more so, that's just the southern Minnesota's town, where our attractiveness for tourism is a big part of our economic source. So behind that, I know about a lot of the conversations of short-term rentals behind that can affect a little bit of that. But between that and affordable housing, not a direct correlation, but those are some of the two main factors that we talk about besides homelessness for just all incomes.
Thanks.
Hi, Shamika, and thank you so very much for the work you do in the community. I realize that being a Black realtor in the Asheville area can be very challenging. I want to ask you a question. What do you think, what would you like to do? Have planning and zoning, how can they actually help improve on some of the challenges that the Black homeowners are experiencing, what would you say that they could, the planning and zoning, what could they do to help?
Diving more into that on research, no clear answer, but really want to dive more into the UDO and going from there, really seeing what rules may or may not be biased on certain things that affect certain communities. That's why I feel like we would, that's the base. I feel like that's the base to really dive into.
So you're saying to actually be able to zone those communities where they could effectively produce more affordable housing to some degree?
Yeah, affordable housing to some degree, and also from there where it's of reflects all the regions and the prices of those regions. That's where I feel, yeah, they directly correlate with that.
And one other question, I'll let you go. And also, in doing so, you find there's a correlation between land and house prices. So basically, if you can have more houses on smaller lots, then the affordability component would be more amenable.
Yeah, for the quantity, for sure.
And so therefore, increasing that type of availability of land in these communities would actually help bring in affordable housing.
Exactly. So evaluating those policies, would have an opportunity to be on the board and dive into that and see what those can be amended will directly enforce assisting that and on the on-swing.
Exactly.
Of that,
Thank you.
of tackling it.
I'm glad we get to walk into the building together today. As we know, here in Asheville, we dwell on this ancestral land of the Cherokee and acknowledge the harms of Asheville's legacy of urban renewal, especially the impacts on Black businesses, homeowners, faith communities, health institutions, and schools. So my question is, what are some of the opportunities you imagine our planning and zoning might have to engage and inform individuals, neighborhoods, and organizations impacted by the historic and current zoning policies and land use as we work towards healing and repair?
Really encompassing those together, those markets together to collaborate and just really collaborating on that, evaluating the history of what's been around those effectively from indigenous peoples and also to urban renewal, really understanding that implications of that, even if you're not directly affected, it's just being overall open to what affects your community members at large. That and recognizing that and bringing awareness to that is the foundation to work on things that are healed. There's no one word answer, no one time short-term answer. That's definitely ongoing, but breaking that down, bringing awareness, and also bringing in opinions of people that are directly identified with that. So you're meeting all the spectrums that you can with research.
So we often review a bunch of projects that don't meet all of our goals. So we'll meet 2 out of 3 or something. It's just hard to do. So design, affordable housing, and housing inventory. How would you prioritize them when reviewing a project?
Inventory affects a lot. It drives to affordable housing, and it also it affects design and the part of new construction processes versus where you're renovating existing homes already. So I would say they fall into those.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So recognizing that the housing crisis is also a supply and a demand crisis, and recognizing that we also have like limited funds, this is a philosophical or an ideological question. Would you think it better to prioritize more housing at higher AMIs or fewer units at lower AMIs?
Well, having people that are below the AMI, that's really where the housing stands for, people that can live here, that work here. So making it more inventory all around for those people, that really helps philosophically into the challenge that we have. then, so definitely over the quality does matter, but in the sense of our crisis, that's where we all talking about quantity in a lot of these questions. So affecting those people that need to be here, that help to make a lifestyle for people that visit here, or just really other noble positions in the community. In that way, you were saying between fewer and lower AMI versus more inventory and higher AMI for, that's a very great question to go between. And I feel like over time, it's surveying what the community really needs between the two. But initially we're having a great inventory at this time right now than a few years ago. And with that inventory is bringing with the average and median prices, it is attainable, but at the same time, it is a little hard. So with just what we focus on with this planning and zoning board, you can do what you can do with the funding and doing as much as you can and actually making a change where you can actually see it in the natural and it's visible. Sometimes it's okay to start out that way with lower quantity for lower people of AMI.
Any other questions, council? Looks like you're about to get buzzed, so, anyway, thank you very much for joining us today.
I appreciate it. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Have a great evening.
And last but not least, we will hear from Jane Margaret Bell. And again, Council Beth Silverman would still like to be considered, but she was not able to attend the interviews today. Hello, hi.
Hello.
Welcome. Will you tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're interested in the Planning and Zoning Commission?
Yes, I'm Jane Margaret Bell, and thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak with you today. My background is largely in the consulting industry, focused on stormwater and environmental engineering. That's the strong suit that I bring, and I'm interested in planning and zoning as someone that grew up here, that's deeply invested in our community, and wants to bring the technical chops that I've developed to this type of group.
Okay. All right, who wants to start there?
I'll go with the easy one in order.
I don't know how easy it is.
Well, you know the question, affordable housing, housing inventory, design. In which order would you prioritize?
I would start with affordable housing as the #1 priority. I think the next two is kind of the quality over quantity question. And I mean, I am a design professional, so it's hard to, what do you mean by design? I think I tend towards quality. I think that is so important that we leave a lasting legacy of good design, of good projects that are executed well, that don't have a lot of big hiccups in the construction phase. So that is a priority for me. But it's hard to downplay the importance of housing stock as well. I know that is a huge issue right now.
I can go back to the question I just asked, if you remember. Would you lean in more towards more supply, more units at a higher AMI, or fewer units at a lower AMI, if you had to make a choice?
I would go with fewer units at a lower AMI.
And why is that?
Because I think that we need a broad spectrum of affordability, and so if we just focus on the middle affordability, we're missing that lower piece, and that's a huge part of what we need for our community to continue.
Thank you.
I'll jump in. Tell me what you think about the primary drivers for the housing crisis here in Asheville.
This is such an interesting question. So there are a number of major drivers at a national level that I've been following closely. I'm a member of Strong Towns, but not only our local chapter, but I've been tuned into Strong Towns and the podcast and content there for 3 to 4 years. And even though my background is largely environmental, I have been looped into housing and other urban planning issues all along. So those are major things. The financial pressure is a big one. But here in Asheville, sorry, losing my train of thought.
All right.
Here in Asheville, we just have so many different needs. It's such a desirable place. It's such a great place to be, and that's making affordability, skyrocket and just be really challenging.
I'll ask you one of the questions I ask. How would you approach the NIMBYs in the community when we're dealing with this affordable housing crisis? Do you have any ideas as how the best way that we could maybe get them on board?
Yeah, the NIMBYs, well, for one, not making it a them versus us, I think is a good starting place. But listening, I think there's a lot of concerns, there's a lot of fears driving some of the issues that we associate with NIMBYism, and I think we need to listen to those. We also need to be in partnership with those groups and providing some education, also being able to learn and expand our perspective. So I would say P&Z, there's a major importance to work closely with council on messaging and outreach with those communities.
So here in Asheville, we dwell on this ancestral land of the Cherokee and acknowledge the harms of Asheville's legacy of urban renewal, especially the impacts on Black businesses, homeowners, faith communities, health institutions, and schools. So my question for today is, what are some of the opportunities that you imagine our planning and zoning might have to engage and inform individuals, neighborhoods, and organizations impacted by historic and current zoning policies and land use as we work towards healing and repair?
I think a similar answer in some ways. I think partnering with council for those conversations, I think being in those communities, being a listening ear, but also promoting the storytelling of what is Asheville's legacy and who are the groups that are still here and need help with thriving. I think I would just go back to having a close partnership. Also, in the UDO reforms, building in different measures like a benefits table that is, geared towards providing benefits to those specific communities.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any other questions? Oh, okay.
Well, if there's time,
I think that
because
is.
you have stormwater experience, what is like a UDO change that you've identified or would hope that we could make that could improve our stormwater infrastructure?
Yeah, great question. Well, I looked at this when I was on the stormwater task force with the city of Asheville a number of years ago, and we were looking at ordinance revisions in a lot of different directions. And stormwater ordinances, there's just so many different ways you can go with it, but a big one is design parameters. What size storm are we holding developers to in terms of the capacity that the stormwater system can provide? It's a really big dialogue around, on this issue around the country right now because of climate change, because we don't have the same storms that we used to. The data that we use from NOAA is historic data, and so we're sizing these pipes and these systems for that. And thankfully that data has become updated, and there are communities that are putting in stricter reforms in that manner. But it's a real process because it comes with a hefty price tag as well. And so with everything, there has to be a balance between meeting these higher goals and helping the city be more resilient to the environment, and also what is practical and fundable by our developers, because we want them to have space and opportunity to create beautiful things for our city.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, thank you very much. We appreciate it. All right, just to reiterate tonight, at the last item on our agenda before general public comment, we will be voting on filling the 2 vacancies that exist for the Planning and Zoning Commission. So thank you all for coming down here.
Thank you.
So,
Okay, so we're adjourned from this part.